Welcome to People, Power, and Politics. Hard talk, riveting interviews, community updates, in-depth analysis. That's People, Power, and Politics. We tell it to you as it is. No holds barred. You are the people, you have the power. We bring you the politics. To listen to our show, be a guest, or to advertise, visit www.pppradio.nyc. That's www.pppradio.nyc.
A very warm welcome to everyone. We are joined by a very special guest, Reverend Uriel Fraser Trumpet from Women on Fire. Welcome. So good to have you here with us.
Welcome. I'm glad to be here. This is exciting and this is new, but it's wonderful to be able to share with you today. Thank you for the invitation.
You are so welcome. So, Women on Fire. Gotta tell me, how did you come up with that name? What is it about?
I'm sure you feel the fire, don't
I
you?
do. I feel the heat.
So, yeah, exactly. Women on Fire is a group of women, predominantly black women, women of color, predominantly women who are of the Christian faith, from various faith traditions, who have gathered together to address how black women's voices have been silenced or muted in this culture. And our desire is to raise black women's wisdom out of the places where it has been muted. And so it is a place of encouragement. It is certainly a place of empowerment. It is a place where women gather in the spirit of sisters gathering, as black women would often traditionally gather, whether it's in the village, around the fire, in the church basement, in the kitchen, at the kitchen dining room table. Wherever the places are that black women have traditionally gathered, we want to reignite that power of sisters gathering, and that sisters would feel encouraged in a culture that does not lift up black women, brown women, does not listen to the power and the wisdom of black women and women of color.
So you mentioned, the voices of black women that have been silenced and muted. Can you share some examples on how Women on Fire are taking this on?
Mm-hmm. So let me also say, because you did ask how did we come up with that title, and because we are predominantly women of the Christian faith, the Holy Spirit, which is talked about in our sacred text, is one of the symbols is fire. There's the dove, there's wind, there's fire. And fire is energy. And I don't know about you, but I don't battle with fire, because fire has power. Power to ignite, power to drive, but also power to destroy. Mm-hmm. And so we are on fire as the day of Pentecost is described in the book of Acts. And when we look at what the Holy Spirit did for the disciples who, before the Holy Spirit came, they were afraid, they felt powerless, they were here, there, and everywhere, but once the Spirit came, they became powerful, they became courageous. And so that's why we decided that we were Women on Fire. And so in terms of examples of black women's voices being muted, we have examples of women who we talked about being at the table, having a seat at the table. You can have a seat at the table, and sometimes you feel at the table that what you, in your mind, think, the thought that you have is insignificant. The thought that you have will not make a difference. The thought that you have, nobody wants to hear. And that's a lot of that has to do with how we are socialized in this culture. But in fact, the thought you have is valid. The thought you have is powerful. The thought you have will make a difference in someone's life. The thought you have is impactful. So while we are taught to be silent, we decide that when we have a seat at the table, that's the time to raise your voice, and as we have heard for generations, speak truth to power. I can personally say, and I'm going to share this example out of my career, and I won't say which agency. And I would go around the city and train organizations and houses of worship to do volunteer blood pressure monitoring programs. And so you teach the people, I teach the trainers then go and run the programs in their houses of worship or their organizations. And every time, if I was at a church, black church, people of color, they would always say to me that living in black skin raises their high blood pressure. Living in a system of oppression raises the stress of it, impacts their blood pressure. Now, this is actually in literature, so it's no longer a question. So I came back to the ivory tower, let me use that word. I came back to the ivory tower and shared that experience. And I was told there's no evidence of that, which I realize now that was a lie. That was a lie. And I allowed that for a minute to invalidate not only what I said, but what the people in the community thought. And so I decided that will never happen again. That will never happen again. And so that is why it is important. Don't second guess yourself, black women. Don't second guess yourself, brown sisters. Just, you have a valid thought, speak it. And don't allow anyone else's opinion of you to impact your opinion of yourself, and certainly the opinion that God has of you.
Excellent. So how can one become a member of Women on Fire?
Basically by reaching out to me, and my email address, yoreel.fraser, F as in Frank, R-A, S as in Sam, E-R, @yahoo.com.
So, Women on Fire, what do you have any programs that you'd like to mention?
The first thing that we did was Women's History Month. In celebration of Women's History Month, we did something entitled Lifting Black Women's Voices, celebrating the wisdom of black women. And so each Friday at 8 p.m., we'd have a presenter who would lift a woman from our experience. Mm-hmm. So we have lifted Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, the first woman president of any nation on the continent of Africa. She was the president of Liberia. And what she said to women was, lift your voice. So we shared that, and women shared what they thought. And so each Friday we lift another woman's quote, and we share the wisdom from that quote. So we did that in March for Women's History Month. We resume in May. May 5th, we resume at 8 p.m. And the sister and her wisdom that we will lift up will be Michelle Obama. And women will have an opportunity to hear one of her quotes, to share the wisdom from that quote, and to express whatever they like, how the quote impacts them, and how they will not be silenced, how their voice will have power. And so if people email me, we can send out that schedule. Mm-hmm. And then we're going to have something in celebration of Pentecost, which is out of our Christian experience, on June 4th at 4 p.m. Again, people can email me, yoreel dot, F as in Frank, R-A, S as in Sam, E-R, @yahoo.com.
So, Reverend Dr. Yoreel Fraser Trumpet, it was such a pleasure speaking with you today from your organization, Women on Fire. And as I mentioned, we look forward to having you back again.
Thank you so very much. It was good to be here. And I consider this a divine interruption, because you never know what God is going to do when you wake up each day. So thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
You are so very welcome.
People, Power, and Politics. Hard talk, riveting interviews, community updates, in-depth analysis. That's People, Power, and Politics. We tell it to you as it is. No holds barred. You are the people, you have the power. We bring you the politics. To listen to our show, be a guest, or to advertise, visit www.pppradio.nyc. That's www.pppradio.nyc.